Okay. All right. So welcome everybody to the September 10th Beta Alpha Psi meeting. We have DHG here with us today. Allison Ballard, Karen Rogie.
Yes.
I remember you hearing that name before, but I never can remember how to pronounce it.
It's all good.
And then we have Lindsay Kearns here as well from DHG. So, and their topic is super interesting. They're going to be talking about the changes and some of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on the accounting world. So super looking forward to that. But I do want to mention that next week we'll be having our Meet the Professionals event virtually. The details on that have been very slow coming, and I apologize for that, and thank you guys all for your patience. But we do have a form that you guys should have received a link to, and that will give us the information that we need to add you to our team. It's going to be done through Microsoft Teams next Thursday. It is going to still be a professional networking event, so take heed to some of the tips that we've already heard as far as, maybe try to find a nicer background, wear nicer clothes, on top at least, for this event, because we want to make a good impression on the professionals, and there's going to be lots of them. So take heed to a few of those comments. It will be from 5 to 8, like usual. The way that it will work is we will have different channels through the Microsoft Teams like it is set up, and each firm will have their own channel, so you can pop in and out of that. It'll take probably a few minutes to get used to how it all works. I know I'm still getting used to it, and we've had several practice runs, so there will probably be a few technical difficulties, but nothing that we can't all work together to overcome. So does anyone have any questions about Meet the Professionals real quick before we move on? No? Great. Okay, so then I will hand it over to DHG. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to call it a brief PowerPoint, but you always like to have some talking points. Let me make sure I can make this happen. Do you all see my PowerPoint?
Yep, you're good, Allison.
Great. Yes. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today. Our topic, as stated, was COVID life in public accounting. And just as a brief introduction, I've met a few of you, I know, but my name is Allison Ballard. I'm the West Virginia Managing Partner and an Assurance Partner in the Charleston, West Virginia office. We also have with us Lindsay Kearns. Introduce yourself, Lindsay.
Yes, I'm Lindsay Kearns. I'm an Assurance Manager in the Charleston, West Virginia office. And I graduated from Marshall in 2013 with my undergrad and with my MBA in 2014 from Marshall.
Thanks, Lindsay. And then also maybe familiar face to some of you, we have Karen Rogie, and so I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Karen Rogie. I'm an Assurance Associate, and most of you probably know me because I did graduate last semester. So yeah, just started with DHG in August.
All right, so what we wanted to do, and again, we want to make this interesting to you. We're going to talk through how we set this presentation up. Was each of us are going to give our different perspectives on how COVID has affected public accounting and how we do what we do on a daily basis, and some thoughts maybe about what it means for going forward. And then also just a few tips. I knew it was pretty timely that Ashlee mentioned about Meet the Professionals and the upcoming interviews that are going to be happening to you in a virtual way. And we had a few tips about that too to add. And then certainly Q&A, any questions you guys have relating to this topic or anything else, we're happy to answer. So we'll get started here. So just to kind of give some background, and I'm sure you guys remember this from being in school in the fall, but March 18th, 2020, we made the decision as a firm to close our offices and moved our 1,800 plus employees to be solely working from home. And this includes canceling all working from client locations, pretty much immediately stopped. Everything went virtual. That was an interesting transition. And then any travel for any purpose. So that meant no going to clients, no going out of town, all of that type of stuff. So that all just immediately stopped. Fast forward to today, you know, we are still as a firm largely working from home. Still some limited client interactions, and most in-person events and conferences have been canceled. So normally this is a time of year we're out at conferences or some training or out with our clients, and we are still working from home. So that is kind of where we are. So hopefully this will change at some point. We expect as a firm, though, that we'll probably be operating this way through December and then revisit at that point. Obviously, West Virginia, as you all seen in the news, it has increasing numbers. And obviously, we're looking at that and trying to monitor how that works both here locally as well as around our footprint. So I'm going to talk about from a firm leadership perspective and, you know, being a partner and a leader in our firm, what that's meant and how we've reacted as a firm. So the first point is that it's really a balancing act, because you want to, of course, first and foremost, keep our people safe, but then at the same time be able to serve and advise our clients. So it's balancing how can we do those two things in an effective way. And what it came down to is there's just a lot of meetings to discuss those things and make those decisions. And Zoom fatigue is real. I don't know if you guys have felt that now that you've been back at school. I know a lot of your classes are virtual, but you know, there initially and just continuously, the number of meetings to discuss whatever it is significant, to the point that I can tell you at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And I didn't realize that there was a thing called Zoom fatigue until somebody said, oh yeah, that you must have Zoom fatigue. I'm like, what? That's crazy, but it is real. So, you know, leadership matters in decisions, you know, our decisions to close our offices, when are we going to open our offices, any other surrounding matters related to that. HR matters, you know, anything surrounding our policies and procedures from an HR perspective. You know, connecting with our people, you know, can't just walk down the hall and say, hey, you know, Lindsay, how's this going? Or what's going on with this, that type of thing. We generally have to have a meeting, generally it's a Zoom meeting or some sort of meeting like that. And then just checking in with our people and keeping connected. Then connecting with our clients. You know, it's been interesting, the number of different platforms. I think I've used every one of them: Zoom, Teams, GoToMeeting, Link, there's a couple others. But, you know, finding the best way to continue to connect with our clients. How can we share information? Checking in with them on a regular basis, particularly since we can't be on site at their locations. You know, normally we would be on an audit or in some other engagement, we'd be at their facility, but if we can't do that, we have to somehow find a way to connect with them. So setting up how regularly we're going to meet, how often are we going to discuss questions, when are they available, because a lot of them are working from home, and just a lot more coordination from that perspective. And then trainings have all become virtual. And again, I'm sure you guys are feeling this right now, having to do class in a virtual way, but it's obviously one of those things that is, you know, I think about an hour is all I can take of a training before the eyes start to cross and you got to get up and do something different. So again, just that has been probably, I think, one of the most difficult changes. And as a leader, just the additional number of meetings beyond just your daily trying to get my work done and talk to my clients has been a significant matter. So, you know, what are we, from a leadership perspective, what are the things that we're having to consider and focus on? So first and foremost, again, is our people. Does everyone have what they need to work from home? Technology, internet. I can tell you, can't tell you how many people have been like, hey, my internet's out. What am I going to do? I mean, that's obviously an important thing. You can't, you know, there for a long time, you couldn't just go to Starbucks. I think you can now, but there's really no place to go to get internet. So what to do there and how to make that work and coordinate. Does everybody have, you know, does their computer work? Does your videos work? You know, that type of thing. Having to have those kind of communications. And then if we need to get things to people, how are we going to get them to them? And then other support, you know, kids at home. Obviously, all you don't have children that are school aged at this time, but you can imagine, you know, if you're trying to work from home and you 6-year-old and that 6-year-old is always trying to, you know, see what you're doing or something like that, or somebody you have pets, maybe pets try to come and, you know, get in your space and you're trying to be effective from home. So what kind of support do people need in addition to work from home? And just mental health, like the loneliness factor, or, you know, interacting, or, you know, having to work from this home office, you know, don't really have an outlet to go anywhere. What kind of support can we give to continue to interact as a group? And then just growth, development, and supervision. How are we going to make sure our people get feedback? How are we going to make sure that our people have opportunities to grow and develop? How are we making sure that they get the proper supervision? The regularity of that, you know, is it a weekly thing? Is it daily? How often? And so, you know, having to evaluate and make decisions around that. And I can tell you, you know, it's a lot of trial and error, because, you know, you just have to figure out what works in each situation, and everyone is different. So I can tell you, I feel like I've reached out and touched everyone that I work with directly, regularly, almost on a daily basis. So if not every other day. So another thing that we've had, though, is client advisory opportunities. Obviously, with change has come new regulations like the CARES Act. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about that. These things called PPP loans, where companies could take loans from the government that'll be forgiven. How does that get accounted for? What do they have to do? It felt like there for a while, just a daily, things were changing daily, as with the government and the time we were in, you know, there's always something new, and having to pay attention to that. And then our clients seeing us as trusted advisors reaching out to us. And so there was a lot of opportunities for us to work with our clients and touch all of our clients in different ways, and try to help them weed through the regulations, if you will. Then talking with them about the business effects of their decisions, like if they were going to close their facility, or if they were, you know, going to do some adjustment to their employee headcount, you know, what would that mean? Or if they were going to defer a project, what was that going to mean for their business, you know, planning for their taxes, those types of things. So again, clients reaching out to us to help them navigate through that as well. And then just operating in a virtual environment. Obviously, you know, they've looked to us for, we have IT advisory services and other service lines that can help them. How can we help them? What are some internal controls they should put in place? How should they handle a certain situation? Reaching out to us to help them with that. So again, a lot of opportunities to advise our clients and add value to them in a meaningful way, which is always a great thing when you're in public accounting, is having those opportunities. So, you know, thinking about where, you know, pros and cons, if you will, of this type of situation that we're in, and kind of more of a longer term view. I think one of the pros, and this will benefit, I think, definitely all of you as you continue into your careers. First thing is flexibility, thinking differently about how we work and how we serve our clients. And I say that a lot of people, you know, have been trying to move towards more flexibility and ability to work from home or work from wherever on a regular basis. But there was some resistance to that because it hadn't really been tried and tested. Well, now everyone has pretty much been working from home. And I think the good thing about that is that companies and businesses, and particularly public accounting firms, are going to be more open to providing more flexibility to their people. And so that, I think, will be a great thing. Expanded collaboration. You know, what that means is that resources can come from anywhere. And I think Lindsay and Karen could probably tell you, I mean, you know, in a virtual work from home environment, you don't have to be on site at the client to be working on a client project. So, you know, we've worked with other offices, we've worked with clients in all kinds of locations. And, you know, we sit here in West Virginia and are doing that. So again, it doesn't really matter where you work, you can collaborate and serve from anywhere. And then a continued focus on technology, new tools and investments. I mean, we invested in going to a Zoom phone, which basically is your phone works through your computer, you know, additional other technology platforms that we've continued to evolve, put some fast forward on those. How can we do things more electronically and virtually? And I think, you know, continuing to make those investments will be important. And again, I think that'll benefit all of you, because those will be, you know, again, technology is continue to grow in use more rapidly. I think even some of the smaller firms have had to really step up their game from that perspective. And so I think that that'll benefit all of you going forward. Some of the cons, though, connecting with our people is really a lot of deliberate action needed in our clients. I mean, you need to plan a little bit more to schedule. I mean, you can try and call people on the phone. They may or may not have a phone that they're accessible. Usually you have to set up a meeting or be more deliberate about your interaction, because it's not just you're going to be out at the client necessarily and able to just go over and to their desk and say, hey, how's it going? Or even working with our people. I mean, you can't just go get coffee and, say, hey, how's it going? So being more deliberate about our interactions with each other. Efficiency, more time to coordinate. It definitely takes more time if you need to get some information, you're trying to do that over email or over the phone. It's definitely less efficient to try to get information as opposed to you go up and say, hey, here, can you give me this? Here's what it looks like. This is what I'm looking for. Sometimes it's like a 3 or 4 email exchange and finally you can get it together, but there is some efficiency loss that we've definitely experienced. And then just delays in the timing of client work, called the year-end snowball effect. People put so many things on hold or just were, concerned with other issues in their businesses that they put a lot of things on hold. And I think what that's going to cause is a lot of delay in things being pushed to be done at the end of the year, into the beginning of the year. So I don't know if any of you are having any spring internships. There's going to be a lot of need for assistance and a lot going on. So something that I don't, kind of like a compression of an already busy time. So anyway, I think those are things that we're going to see the longer term effect of this situation. And so we'll continue to navigate those. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Lindsay and let her give kind of more of a frontline from a manager perspective.
All right, thanks, Allison. And I think you'll see some overlapping themes between mine and Allison's. A lot of the same challenges she sees, I see even from my perspective, maybe just in a different way per se. So might see some overlapping themes, but some of the advantages I've seen. So I was a first-year manager this year. So, with these unprecedented times, there was no real playbook per se. So I was we were given this independence. And it really gave me a chance to grow and think of new ways to connect with clients, connect with our team members that, there wasn't, like I said, there wasn't a right or wrong way. So it was really a growth opportunity, I think, for all of us, kind of sink or swim situation per se. So it was kind of, I enjoyed kind of the challenge of that. And like I said, we're given more independence to do that. So obviously a big advantage is can kind of dress for your day. So most of the time I'm in t-shirts and sweats. So back to kind of my college attire. So it's always nice to, don't have to do makeup in the morning and stuff. Obviously if we have client calls, and I dressed up a little bit for you guys on the top, I still have sweatpants on the bottom, but so there's a perk that you can kind of just, per se, dress for your day. Obviously, there's no more commute. I was spending about an hour to an hour and a half in the car, round trip a day. So, somehow I still manage to be late some days with my 10-second commute, but that's obviously given me, more opportunity, more family time. I'm able to have lunch with my significant other now, whereas in the past, didn't always have that opportunity. I was able to get a puppy during quarantine. Probably going to have some separation anxiety after this is all said and done, but, little joys we were able to kind of, I think, find in this time. But, obviously there have been challenges. From a manager perspective, a lot of times in jobs, I'm the kind of the main point person from all aspects. So I'm directly communicating with the client, scheduling field work, making sure we're getting the necessary requests, I'm also, the main point person communicating with the client, or with the partner, making sure they're in the loop. And then I'm also responsible for, communicating with the other team members, making sure, keeping them busy, that, they're on track with, getting the job done. So obviously that can be a challenge in a virtual environment. And I think challenging that norm of, generally we're on site at clients, Allison kind of touched on it, we're able to, go to the client directly and say, hey, we need this, we have these questions, we can kind of hash it out right then and there. So I think a big challenge has been challenging that norm. A lot of times, when you're not face-to-face with clients, they can kind of put you on the back burner. So I think we've had to come out with creative ways to, stay in contact and keep the job, kind of prevent the snowball effect, if you will. So we've come up with, what I've kind of done is, set up, daily Zoom meetings with our clients, which has also, again, led to kind of Zoom fatigue. Challenging, maybe in the past, we would only send a request list up front at the front of the engagement. Now we're sending, kind of daily update status, kind of give them hard deadlines. So just kind of having to come up with new creative ways to connect with those clients and still keep, good relationships. I had a new client, 6:30, that we were never able to meet face-to-face in person. So we had to come up with building those relationships. We had to come up with new ways to kind of build those relationships for a new client. Obviously, not even from a job perspective, but just connecting with team members on a day-to-day basis. In the office, I'm able to walk up to Karen's desk and say hi, or, say, hey, you want to go grab lunch? So we've had to come up with creative new ways to kind of connect and make sure, people aren't feeling that loneliness. So I think we've implemented some happy hours and some virtual trivias, done some fun things like that. Also, me and Karen are in a fantasy football league from the office. So, just trying to do unique things that still feel like part of the team and, connected kind of in these times has been challenging. But, and then obviously the monotonous nature of this, you're sitting in the same room day in and day out. One of the things that I was kind of attracted to being an auditor was getting to see, different clients and just kind of getting out, traveling. So obviously a challenge has just been balancing that work and personal life when you're not leaving your house. So, I've tried to make it a point to, turn off my computer at a certain time, or, actually take a lunch break, whether, just go watch 30 minutes of Netflix just to kind of get away from it. So again, trying to come up with creative ways, take my dogs on a walk at lunchtime. So, I mean, maybe you guys can implement some of those as you go through school. I know it's going to probably feel monotonous. You're going through a virtual learning environment. So I encourage you guys to try to find unique ways to not feel as lonely going through. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen now, kind of give her perspective from an associate perspective.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, I started full-time in August, so I'm really new to DHG as a full-time employee, but I was going to give you my perspective of my onboarding process and just a little bit about how I feel working from home and the pros and cons. So to start, I want to talk about my onboard experience. And so overall, it's been really smooth. My pre-hire paperwork, most of it, or all of it, essentially all of it, I was able to complete it online, so there was no problem there. And then my first day, we had a new hire orientation. It was through Zoom. And it was a firm-wide orientation. There's like 10 to 15 of us across the firm, so not just the Charleston office. And they just went over the like resources within the firm and just basics about the firm and our mission statement and whatnot. And then after my orientation, I met with my coach. And so when you're a new employee or when you get hired, DHG appoints you a coach and a guide. And a coach is actually, mine's Lindsay, and she's in charge, well, not in charge, she's someone who helps evaluate my performance and career development and have those type of conversations. And my guide is someone closer in the level as me. So mine's a senior associate, and she's more of my mentor and helps me with my basic conversations or any questions that I have. And so my first day I had my orientation, and then I met with my coach. And then because of COVID, that was essentially my training. I think if there wasn't COVID going on, DHG has a DHG launch and sends you to Charlotte for some trainings and stuff, which is super cool, super fun. But with COVID going on, our orientation was online. And so that's why I wanted to stress that internships are important. And I'm sure that your professors have stressed this a lot as well. But I had an internship with DHG last summer. So I think that has made my transition as a full-time employee much more smooth because I'm more familiar with their processes and their systems and stuff like that. So it wasn't as hard to adjust. So I definitely just want to stress the importance of internships. And yeah, I think that helped me a lot. So now, from my perspective, I think most of it does overlap with what Allison and Lindsay have already said, but you do have more times in the morning because you don't have to drive to work, you don't have to park the car, you don't have to get ready like Lindsay said, you can wear comfier clothes. There's more options for lunch, as Lindsay also mentioned. I don't have to worry about packing a lunch or what I'm gonna eat that day because I'm 10 feet away from my kitchen, so it's easy for me to decide. And for the cons, that was also mentioned, but the communication has definitely been more of a struggle than if we were in person, because aside from work that I think Lindsay has already mentioned, like assigning work and that type of conversation via communication, as a new employee, I did have an internship, but there's still questions that I have about like our systems and stuff, like caseware, we use caseware. And so it's just harder to, like if I have a question, I have to make time to communicate via Zoom for someone to explain small issues to me, if that makes sense. Not quite work related, but just like the technical type of stuff, like shortcuts and like, do you guys understand what I'm saying? Just like small little things that would be easier to just lean over and be like, hey, how do you do this? And answer easily. And then also distractions. I don't know about you all, but when I was in college, if I had a lot of work to do, I would always go to the library and have like a designated study space and stuff like that. And so now working from home, I don't have like a designated home office. I actually have a desk that's just in the living room. So it's been harder to like have that work atmosphere mindset, and I have to be more conscious to not let the distractions get to me. Since I am sitting in the living room, I can't be like, hey, I should turn on the TV, because that's not a working atmosphere. So I think it's just important to establish a distraction-free workspace and to have like a little study zone where, you know, like you have to focus for this amount of time, because obviously we're not at the office in our cubicles and stuff. So that's really all I had.
I'll take it back over from there. Thanks, Lindsay and Karen. So hopefully that was helpful or useful or interesting. Now, one thing we wanted to mention, we know, again, I mentioned in the beginning, we know that campus recruiting season is here, and you know, our campus recruiting folks were sending out the dates for everything. I was realizing this is before Meet the Firms and then also on-campus interviews. And so we have a couple recommendations. And again, you might be seeing Lindsay at the Meet the Firms. I think she's doing that. But, you know, I think it was mentioned earlier, attire is still important. you know, for that purpose. I mean, again, we're not expecting you necessarily to come in a suit and tie, but at least something nice. I mean, don't come in a t-shirt, because when we're, you know, we're still trying to, from that process, it'll be your reflection of you on your employer or your possible future employer, of your appearance. That is still something. I mean, we do want to see people present themselves professionally in this manner. So we would say, please don't need to do suit and tie, but something, you know, nicer, blouse, or, you know, just a collared shirt is fine. Something like that. You know, for these interactions, particularly if you're doing a virtual interview, I will say, you know, ensure you're in an area where you can be focused on that interaction. So there's no real distractions. I mean, again, if you try to be somewhere where you can just completely focus on, and that even the person interviewing you or that you're talking to, the prospective employer, can be focused on that conversation. Because if you have distractions, if you're distracted or something is distracting, it distracts from the interaction. So try to do that as much as possible. Obviously, you can't eliminate all distractions all the time, but that would be something, just again, you're trying to make an impression in a really short window of time. And so it's important to try and focus that. I would say this for virtual or non-virtual, be prepared with questions. You know, I've done the on-campus interviews at Marshall a couple of years now. You know, we're going to ask you questions, but we want you to ask us questions too, and come prepared with some questions and do some research and understanding of, you know, whichever firm you're talking to. I've done some research. I mean, there's always internet available resources. Have some good questions, come with some standard questions, and be ready to have a good interactive conversation. Again, short time to really make an impression. So it's important to be prepared. And then follow-up communications. I think it's even more important in this virtual environment, again, to make that impression, is the follow-up email, follow-up communication. Hey, appreciated our, you know, meeting or interview, and have that follow-up conversation to make that additional connection. I think that'll be really important in this virtual environment. Lindsay or Karen, do you have any other thoughts about that?
No, I think maybe Ashlee mentioned it at the beginning, but making sure you have kind of a clean background. Maybe it's putting up one of the screens, or just so that, you know, the person interviewing you isn't, you know, distracted, you know, looking at things in your background and your workspace, because we do understand there's not much options. You know, you might have limited resources, but, you know, kind of either cleaning up your background or just putting on one of these virtual backgrounds. I thought that was a good suggestion earlier. So
yeah, mine's kind of fun because I have so many meetings. I got rid of the DHG background. I went some fun.
I have to go mine green, so
it's a talking point. Everybody brings it up. So well, that's all the prepared content that we had. We have this slide with our contact information. Certainly feel free, if you have follow-up questions, reach out. I guess, Ashlee, I don't know if you want to open it up for a question, anybody have questions or about this topic or anything, or any of us, any or all of us. Stop my share.
Well, I have a question. So you guys mentioned several different cons in your slideshow, but what has been the biggest challenge for each of you for this transition? I know Karen kind of slid into it as far as like she didn't really have the experience as an associate before COVID, since she started in August, but especially for you, Allison and Lindsay, what was your biggest challenge of the transition?
Let Lindsay go first.
Probably just communicate, like figuring out what's going to work. It was, I think Allison mentioned it was a lot of trial and error at first. You know, how are our clients going to respond to that? I mean, I think at first everybody didn't really know how long this was going to last. It was kind of like, you know, we left the office on March 18th and we were like, oh, we'll be back in a few weeks. So I think just trying to figure out, you know, what works best was kind of probably the biggest challenge at first. Yeah, I don't know if Allison, you had something.
Yeah, I would kind of elaborate. I mean, I think that the issue is really getting that interaction with our clients to get the information we need to do what we need to do, because, you know, some of our clients are not paper-based, but a lot of them still are. So it's like, all right, well, can you scan us that? All right, well, they're like, yeah, we can, but it's going to take us longer. And, you know, kind of getting them to give us things electronically, or how are we going to get them electronically? And then, you know, generally, you know, that was around late March. There's this April 15th deadline I'm sure you guys have heard of, you know, what was going to happen with that, and just trying to get things done. We were almost stymied there for a while, trying to be like, okay, we're in this environment. We were going to be at your site next week. Well, now we can't come. So how can you get us the information? And then clients are delayed because they have other priorities, namely, you know, them dealing with, do I have to shut my business down? What are the ripple effects on my operations? And so we're not first and foremost in their mind, which we completely understand. But what does that do for the ripple down effect to, you know, Lindsay's trying to manage the audit, and we're trying to have Karen have something to be working on, and kind of that managing that whole client and our people, and keeping everybody on a path, getting things done. That was the hardest transition, I think. I'd agree with Lindsay that communication and just getting the information that we need in a different way so that we can do what we need to do to help our clients. So I would say the other thing that was challenging is just the sheer volume of new rules and regulations and stuff that came out, and trying to absorb it all and digest it and interpret it, and then advise our clients, because they're calling us constantly going, hey, I'm trying to get this PPP loan. I need to do this and that. Can you help me? And we're like, yeah. And it's all in like a couple week period because everybody's frantically trying to get the money. And so it's like, whoa. So you're trying to do that as well as other things. So that was definitely a very frantic period. It's slowed down some now, but it was definitely a time that was kind of crazy for everybody.
I have one question. What is the difference between assurance and audit?
Well, it's just a fancy term for audit. Assurance, actually, so I think it's more properly captures what we do. So there are different services that we do, and not just an audit. I don't know if you've had auditing class yet, and it's probably something you don't hear a lot about, but we do other you know, obviously we issue all kinds of reports, and those reports provide some level of assurance, like a review report or a compilation report. And maybe you guys haven't seen any of that. I know in school they don't emphasize a lot of that, but when we say assurance, it's more broad to encompass various services that we provide some sort of report around something. And that's called assurance. So that's why we don't say audit, because audit is a very narrow type of service, and it encompasses. Assurance is more broad. So again, it's just a different term, means roughly the same thing. So.
I had a question. So what is a habit that you all picked up during this at-home work that you wouldn't mind carrying over to when you go back to the offices?
That's interesting. I'll let Karen go first on that. Do you?
I was trying to think about that. I was like,
Habit.
Sure.
I'll go. I would like more of the scheduled meetings that should be emails to continue to just be the email instead of having pointless meetings. But I like that. I like that aspect that sometimes it's just summarized in an email.
I think though it's not really a habit, but it's actually something that's been interesting. You know, we tend some of the not pointless meetings that we have to be, you know, a lot of times we go and have these meetings, and you have to travel, and that's fine. I don't mind traveling and things like that. But we've been having more regular meetings, but shorter. on a regular basis with people from all around the firm for various reasons, you know, just leadership or service line industries, different groups, even teams within a firm. So we've been doing them in this fashion, and then you actually get to see people, you know, and actually it's in a short, as opposed to having a phone call. I mean, I don't think I used to turn on my camera when we would do any of this stuff. I'd never turn it on because I didn't really want anybody looking at me, but now everybody's good with it. And so this is what we do. And I can tell you that even some people I hadn't seen in like years, I've seen them like, you know, weekly or bi-weekly. And it's just kind of interesting that we're connecting in that fashion, which has been nice. Again, I still get Zoom fatigue, so I don't want too many meetings, but being able to regularly connect in this fashion has its positives. And so I hope we do more of that instead of trying to have like the big once a year big meeting where we all go and get together. I think this is more effective.
I don't think I really have an answer to this question because I think, because I just started a month ago, that what Lindsay and Allison just said, that kind of is the norm for me. So I'm used to.
It's not getting up early because I sure as haven't been. So I'd love to say I've been working out in the morning, but no, not that easy. Anyway.
Where do you have more than one firm, and where are they located?
Yeah, we have offices in I think we're up to 30 offices. So we're in we have several offices in North Carolina. We're mostly a southern-based firm. Charlotte is where we're based. In West Virginia, we just have a Charleston office, but we have several virtual employees. Like we have people who live in Morgantown, but they, you know, work for us and that type of thing. We have our farthest north office is New York. And then we have DC office, Richmond, Norfolk, Virginia, Asheville, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Tampa, Florida, Dallas, Texas, and then the farthest west office is actually one out in LA. So, and then we have Ohio, a couple other places. You know, I don't know going forward though, it'll be interesting again with this environment. You know, we've had a lot more people move to a virtual work scenario where they don't necessarily, they've moved for whatever reason. We've continued to see that as a movement. And again, one of the things I said, I think that that'll become more accepted and more common as a situation. Like we have an employee who's a tax person who lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. We don't have an office in Knoxville, Tennessee, but she lives there and she moved there. And so she's continued to work for us, but lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so again, it's one of those things that I think offices will still exist, but that'll kind of change going forward.
Is it common for someone that works in one office, if they wanted to move, to go to another location? Do you guys support that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had that happen. We've had a couple people move to another office. You know, obviously, you know, again, in this environment, it doesn't really matter where you sit anymore. And the work that we do, we have people on our teams from all different locations, I mean, we do have clients just here that we work on just here, but we also have people come in from other locations and our people go to other locations. So, you know, if somebody's looking to transfer like to a Charlotte or something like that, that's definitely a process they can go through if that has a change in life situation. Obviously, we're just looking for good people who do good work. And so, you know, if you're that person, you can go anywhere. So.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions?
I have another one. If you're still on remote working when it comes time to internships. How does that work?
So we actually had our summer internship this past summer, was virtual. It was slightly reduced. It ended up being I think it was a 4-week internship instead of a 6-week. And Zach Bodges, was the one who, and Olivia Freeland both did that internship for us. So it basically became a virtual platform where they kind of did like what Karen did. Karen came in and she got a virtual orientation. They got that too. It was a little bit longer because they had to learn some of our technology. So, we would probably do the similar thing. We had to be very deliberate. And the reason we delayed it and made it shorter was because we had to develop a lot of content in order to make it a really interesting and good experience for our people. But after that orientation, which lasted about 4 days, I think it was, then everybody jumped in and did client-related work. And obviously it took, again, a little bit more deliberate intent to explain and have set meetings and that type of thing. But, I think all feedback was that it went really well. And again, I think it's because we took the time to really be intentional about developing a program that would work well from a virtual perspective. So it's already developed. And if we had to do it again, we'd already have it set up to go. So, and again, our people could continue to just work virtually like this, like Karen's doing, come on board, start from go, working virtual. So, we sent their computers to them. We sent Karen her computer. We send them all the technology that they need. When they're done, they send it back. And that's basically how it worked.
Does anybody else have any questions? I guess no. All right, well, thank you guys so much. That was a super interesting presentation and very, very relevant to this time period that we're all trying to adjust to. So does anybody have any questions about Beta Alpha Psi perchance? You didn't get answered before? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and presenting to us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing at least Lindsay at Meet the Professionals next week. On a side note, I have been working to add the firm representatives to our team. So Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind checking your teams to see if that worked and letting me know, I would super appreciate it.
Okay, yep, I got the email. I'll let you know. I'll shoot you an email if it doesn't work.
Gotcha.
Or if it does, I'll let you know.
Like you guys said, this whole communication through virtual platforms is another thing that I'm also having to learn for a lot of this stuff. So all the help and patience is very much so appreciated.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a nice, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.